by those who support the crackdown, that the protesters in Rabaa al-Adawiyya and in Nahda Square were given fair warning about this, and that they brought this on themselves. What do you say to that?
Okay, this is again, this is the same scenario of the 25th revolution. They are trying to steal the 25th revolution from us again. In the 25th revolution, we managed to achieve something huge, which people have the right to say their voice without fear. They have the right to demonstrate. They have the right to make rallies. And during the Morsi regime, whether we liked it or not, whether all those mistakes or not, during the Morsi regime 1 year, people were demonstrating throughout the year. Nobody was shooting at them, nobody was arresting them, and so on. People were blocking roads, people were... This kind of what your guests have said in Egypt, that this was by public demand, that people were pushing the army and the police to interfere. This is not true. This is not true. It was the media. The media were pushing and brainwashing people and asking them to do that.
Zakaria Abdel Hadi, what about some of the statements that we've heard from some of the Muslim Brotherhood leaders over the last few weeks? We heard Mohammed al-Bataghi warning that his supporters would mobilize against the government if Mohammed Morsi was not reinstated as president. A lot of people took that as insightful language and incitement of violence.
If there is somebody inciting violence, this is unacceptable, but I don't think that this was inciting. Until the last day when I saw Beltaji on your channel, when he was speaking after his daughter was sniped by a sniper, was killed, a 17-year-old girl, like my daughter, was shot there, harmless. He said, we are a peaceful demonstrators and we will continue. Those buildings around the Rabaa al-Adawiyya were all military army bases, and nobody attacked them, nobody threw stones on them, nobody did anything. And they are trying to frame. It is the same, I'm telling you, it is the same catalogue of the 25th revolution. It is the same thing. They said that the Muslim Brotherhood they are trying to single the 25th revolution to one group, that it is the Muslim Brotherhood, and then after that they're trying to single them, that they are a terrorist group, they are doing this, they are killing this, they are doing this, and all this is nonsense. This is rubbish. What is happening? And now they are saying that they're burning a police office in Al Giza, or they're burning this. This is not true. This is what exactly was happening on the 28th of January, when the Mubarak regime, people were burning the police station, they were burning things to put fear in people in what will happen to them.
Carol Kirsten, what does the future hold now for the Muslim Brotherhood? I mean, realistically, where do they go from here? Is there any chance for any sort of political reconciliation now?
Well, I think we are in uncharted territory here, and we actually have been in uncharted territory since the regime change of 2011. It is fully understandable that the Muslim Brotherhood is unwilling to back down. They can rightly claim that Mohammed Morsi became president through free and fair elections. I think nobody was contesting that in 2012, and even though maybe the international community and a large segment of even the Egyptian population did not consider Morsi their preferred choice, you have to, of course, respect the outcome of elections. The fact that now a military intervention, and I think the word coup should be used, I don't know what other word is applicable to a military intervention into the political process, the Muslim Brotherhood perceives it as that they are being robbed of their opportunity to govern the country, and they have been waiting for that more than 80 years, so that sentiments are running very high on their side is fully understandable. The problem is, of course, that Mohammed Morsi has not helped the situation by the political course he adopted, and which was watched with unease both internationally and domestically, I would imagine, where he was concentrating so much power in his hands that from the outside looking in, there was very little difference between the power of which he was holding as head of state. But the Muslim Brotherhood cannot be excluded from the political process. I think anybody would be fooling themselves if they believe they can be excluded or disqualified. You will have to deal with the Muslim Brotherhood.
Do you think the Muslim Brotherhood and the Morsi supporters should have been more accommodating, perhaps, if I could put it that way? I mean, if we go back to just before this crackdown, here we are more than 6 weeks on from the events of July 3rd when Mohamed Morsi was removed as president. It was looking to a lot of people increasingly unlikely and unrealistic that Morsi would be reinstalled as president, regardless of whether you wanted that or not. Was that a realistic position for the Muslim Brotherhood leadership to maintain at this point?
Realistic, probably not, but I don't think there is a spirit of pragmatism.
But then this goes back to what I'm saying. Doesn't that feed into the notion that they weren't willing, that they were showing what some would call a lack of political maturity here, if I can put it that way?
I don't think they are politically immature. They have more than 80 years experience in playing the game, and in the 50s, 60s, when they were on the brink of extermination by a repressive military regime, they did decide to change course and try to gain influence by civil society activities. I think at the moment, over the past year, the political scene in Egypt, which was fragmented, I think, from the moment that the Mubarak regime fell, has moved from fragmentation to polarization. And I think the intransigent position of the Muslim Brotherhood and the sort of forceful attitude of the military-backed interim government is now showing how desperate the situation in Egypt is. And I wonder if there is any chance that maybe a silent middle field is the only one that can break this stalemate. The problem there is that this middle field is completely fragmented and incapable of speaking with one voice.
Marwa Maziad, we've already seen, I want to ask you, we've already seen the results in the resignation of Mohamed al-Baradei. Could more follow him out the door in the interim government? Is there a chance that this could perhaps increase tensions between the civilian government and the military?
I want to go back to one thing that you started with, the idea of excluding a group, the Muslim Brotherhood. I think Baradei was all along trying to find a political solution, but his timing is, of course, is not wise to move out of this at this point. Actually, the political solution would be after this security solution has taken place. I think there has to be new criteria for integrating political Islam in Egypt. This is a great opportunity for actually learning from the Turkish experience. I happen to have extensive research experience in Turkey. There was a moment when Erbakan was told that he is trespassing constitutional borders, and his government had to resign. Now, what did his followers do? His followers started two political parties, one of which was Erdogan's Freedom, Adalet ve AK party, the Justice and Development Party, and they won for elections. So the Muslim Brotherhood did not do what a viable political party should have survived in a political scene. The sheer description of saying Freedom and Justice Party is the political arm of the Jama'ah or the group or the Muslim Brotherhood.
Sorry to interrupt, but you talk about an inclusive democracy and getting Islamists in an inclusive democracy. You can't realistically have that while cracking down on the Muslim Brotherhood and its leadership at the same time, can you?
And the distinction, of course, between the Egyptian case, which has its own peculiarity, unfortunately, from the Turkish case, which was a development from one party to the other, is that there is a use of violence. So violence is a factor here that we had to deal with in Egypt, because the Islamists, or they never say Islamist parties, because Turkey is a secular state. When in fact Erdogan came to Egypt, he was talking about being a Muslim prime minister for secular Turkey. But the Muslim Brotherhood actually told him bye-bye, we don't want to hear that. But I'm talking about the history of the Islam-inspired parties, the political Islam in Turkey, never had a violent element to it, whereas the Muslim Brotherhood and the Jama'at, we have in Egypt a history of a use of violence or a threat of violence, and that complicates the issue very much. So if we are to move forward towards the inclusion of political Islam or Islam-inspired parties, the discussion has to be from the values that motivate economic policies, foreign policies, political laws of some sort, but not the formulation that the Muslim Brotherhood have had. And I think they pressured President Morsi so much that they became the liability on him as president.
All right, just in the couple of minutes or so that we got left, I want to turn to Zakaria Abdel Hadi on this, and I want to ask you about, you had mentioned earlier about the fact that many Muslims and Muslim Brotherhood supporters had protected churches in some of these areas, but the response from many supporters has been to attack and burn down churches and attack the Christian community. There have been numerous reports of that on Wednesday, more than a dozen at least. How do you expect people to have sympathy then for the Muslim Brotherhood if this is how some of them react?
Because what I'm trying to say, this is the same tactics of the 25th revolution, the same tactics that happened, that the government, and we have already discovered that when there was a burning in Alexandria, the Kanisa Qaddisain, it was blotted and burned by the military, by the security officers. Okay, so this is the same tactics that they are using now. What we are hearing is one side story from the media from the